Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the third edition of Talking Brazil Ball. We've got brand new features on today. We're finally trying to get the video up and running. So, if you're joining us on our YouTube channel, hopefully you can see me and George coming at you live. Well, not live, but coming at you from our homes. So episode 3. I'm James again, and I'm here with my co-host George, as always. How are you doing today, George?
Yeah, okay, James, thank you. Yeah, it's been, like you said, new features, new ideas for us, and trying to work out all the goings on between, the internet and how to record it and things. So, yeah, I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, like you said, the YouTube channel should be all out so you can see both of myself and James, and also hopefully you can record it and listen to it on, through your ears without watching us as well. So yeah.
Yep, we're trying to work out the internet and everything. It's been a couple of weeks since we did our episode, the clubs of Rio. So we promised that we'd be back and we'd be looking at another city, a Brazilian city, and the inner workings of the football in that city and the clubs that it plays host to. So today we're looking at a even bigger city than Rio, aren't we, George?
Yes, it's bigger city. We're looking at Sao Paulo today, James. So yeah, the clubs of Sao Paulo, as the title says. So yeah, excited for this one. Again, it's another rainy day here, isn't it? So we're jumping into some warmer climates for the time.
We are indeed. So it's the most populous city in Brazil. It's the one of the most populous cities in the whole world. Actually, it's apparently the 12th most populous city in the whole on the whole planet. The most populous city outside of Asia. So it's a real metropolis. We said Rio was a metropolis. Well, Sao Paulo is even more so. So it's a huge city, and it does have, thankfully, some absolutely enormous football clubs. So we're going to look at today. There's 3 really big clubs in Sao Paulo, isn't there? So we're
Yeah.
going to look at all 3 of them. And we're also going to touch on one that's slightly outside, and we might just have a little a comment on another one as well. But so do you want to introduce the clubs, George, just briefly, and then we'll go into each of them individually?
Yeah, so we've got obviously Palmeiras, we've got Sao Paulo, Corinthians, and Red Bull Bragantino.
Yeah, well, like I say, so the 3 big ones there are the Palmeiras, Sao Paulo, Corinthians. We will touch on Bragantino a little bit as well. But yeah, 3 giants of the Brazilian football landscape, the South American football landscape, really. So we'll start with the most successful of those teams, which is Palmeiras. So Palmeiras are actually the most successful Brazilian club in terms of league titles. They've won 12. They are the current champions. That was their 12th title that they won just a few months ago. So yeah, they've won 4 Copa do Brazils as well, which is more than any of their local rivals. They've won 3 Copa Libertadores as well on the international stage. And they've won 25 of the Campeonato Paulistas, which, if you remember, we spoke about the Carioca with the local Rio Championship. So Palmeiras are the second most successful in Sao Paulo with 25 championships. So, George, what have you learned about Palmeiras, and what can you tell us? They are rivals, I guess, in some degree of your club Flamengo. So,
Yeah,
what
a
have you
little,
learned about
little bit.
Palmeiras?
Well, of course, they won the latest league title, didn't they? And obviously, like you said, very, they have a lot of titles to the name. Most successful club. They were founded by by Italian immigrants, which I found quite interesting in 1914. So it's quite an old club. First, that Palmeiras wasn't actually their first name as a club. It did change in 1942. Palestra Italia, it was called initially. Obviously, founded by Italian immigrants, which was very interesting, I found, actually. The stadium, Allianz Parque, sorry, is a capacity of 43,713. So it's a big stadium as well. Obviously need to fill in all them fans in there, don't they, James? So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic club, and
well, apparently they've got. You talk about the fans. Apparently they've got 21 million fans, which some of these figures that they talk about. We spoke about Flamengo last week or the other week being the biggest and most supported of the Brazilian clubs with I think 40 million, wasn't it? And apparently you've got three of the next most supported clubs here. So Palmeiras are actually the least supported of the big three in Sao Paulo, apparently, but that makes them the fourth most supported in the country, apparently, with 21 million. So, yeah, like you say, a lot of fans, they won't all fit into the 43,000. But yes, interesting. The club itself was founded, like you say, very interesting story. And did you manage to find out why they actually eventually changed the name?
You know what? I didn't actually, but do you know? Have you got that information? Oh wow, you perhaps done a little bit more in depth than me, but on this one anyway. But there you go.
Well, they actually were obviously Italian founded, and they were Italian up until I don't know the exact year. I think it was 1942. And the reason for the change was that the president of Brazil at the time, and I don't know his name, decreed that during the Second World War, because it was quite an Italian kind of influenced culture, I think, but he decreed that during the Second World War, no Italian kind of nationalist names or symbols or anything should be shown because they had joined the Second World War as part of the Allies. So obviously, Italy was part of the Axis kind of forces along with Germany and Japan, and so they were technically kind of an enemy. So they weren't allowed to kind of continue with the Italia kind of moniker. So it was actually from the president that they had to stop using that name, really. So then they went with Palmeiras. I don't know exactly why it was Palmeiras exactly, but yeah, that's the reason they changed it, and it's been that way ever since. Obviously they're not enemies anymore, but it kind of stuck, I think, and that's what they've obviously gone with now.
Yeah, well, right. Well, I think having said that, when you were saying that, actually, I think I did read something about it, but I wasn't sure exactly what the situation was. But that's very interesting, isn't it? And it's an interesting club. I didn't get. I don't know if you've got actually where they based in Sao Paulo. Actually,
they're from they're from an area called Pedizes. Pedizes. I'm not sure.
Right. So it's
in the north of the city.
Right. Oh, okay. So like you said, it's such a it's very well supported, very winning a lot of things in Brazil. So it's an important team in the country, of course. And the president, of course, is a lady actually, Laila Majalani Pereira.
Easy for you to say.
Well, easy for me. It's a crack. I need to brush up on my Portuguese, I think, and get that little accent going. But that's the lady, 59-year-old. She's the fifth richest woman in Brazil, being the president of Palmeiras since 2015. So it's a little bit of an interesting thing as well. So I have got on all of the clubs little sort of fact maybe about the president and things like this. So I found it interesting just to have a look at who was running the clubs, really, as well as other things, in it.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Well, you talk about little facts. Another good little fact about Palmeiras, along with Sao Paulo, actually, is that they have had a representative in the Brazilian national team that have won the World Cup. So 5 times they've won it, and Palmeiras and Sao Paulo have both had at least one representative in the squad in all of those triumphs. So
wow,
that's
yeah, it's
quite a
amazing.
feather.
Yeah.
So I did actually get down those players. I thought it might be interesting to have a little look and see who they were. So we'll go on to Sao Paulo afterwards, but purely sticking with Palmeiras. So I've got them down here.
Excuse me.
Are you all right there?
Yeah, all right. Just having a bit of a, I got a bit of a frog in my throat, I think, by the
Sounds
sound of
like
it.
it.
But all
Well, I'll
clear
try.
and all clear, and you go on with your list of names.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of these will be familiar to you or to our listeners. Some of them were familiar to me. Actually, not many of these were. So 1958, the first World Cup win, there's a chap called Jose Altafino. 1962 was a bit more meant a bit more. Jalma Santos, who was an all-time legend for Palmeiras and for Brazil as well, won 2 World Cups, but one with Palmeiras. He was the right back, and he's one of only 3 players to feature in the World Cup All-Star 11 3 times. I think the others were Philip Lahm, and I think the late great Franz Beckenbauer. So he's in kind of esteemed company, Jalma Santos, and he's a Palmeiras legend. Also Vavá, who scored in the final in 58. He was at Palmeiras as well. 1970, there's a chap called Baldocchi, who only won 1 cap, so not much of a distinguished career that one. Then 1994, they had a chap called Zinho, who played the final. Was one of the starters, and then they had Mazinho, who is of course relevant these days for being the father of Thiago Alcantara, the Liverpool midfielder, and also Rafinha, who I think is in Qatar at the minute. But yeah, Mazinho and Zinho, which is
Rodrigo, isn't it? Not Rafinha.
No, Rafinha. Rodrigo, the old Leeds player, you mean?
Oh yeah.
No, what are you on about? Mazinho is the father of Thiago and Rafinha.
Oh yes. Oh yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah. And then 2002, the last World Cup.
bit of a confusion in my mind there, but yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time, huh?
Well, no, absolutely not. No.
So 2002, to round it off, was Marcos, the goalkeeper. You might remember him, bald fella. He was
I do
Palmeiras.
remember him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh right. Oh wow.
So there you go. And we like to look at the kind of the players who've come through just to familiarise ourselves and look at the kind of youth team. They are famed, I think, for the Youth Academy Palmeiras. So have you found some players who they're quite prolific at the minute, aren't they? But have you found any kind of former players? I know there is a few notable ones, especially from kind of the 90s.
Yeah, so I mean, I tend to kind of look at players like I did for the Rio edition from like who have made it into Europe. Obviously, we've got Endrich, and who's recently gone to Europe, hasn't he? From the last season's title-winning team. Gabriel Jesus of Arsenal came through at Palmeiras. Fantastic. He had, went to Man City. I don't know if he came straight from Palmeiras to Man City. I don't think.
Yeah.
Did he? Oh, right. Yeah, because he's obviously going well at Arsenal and that won titles at City. To be fair, the only other one I could really find who's gone from Palmeiras to Europe was Arthur Cabral, who I don't think he's a Brazilian international, to be fair, but he's playing with. I think he's playing with Fiorentina. He was playing at Fiorentina. I think he's moved perhaps now.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah, he was at Bar, wasn't he? And then he went to Fiorentina. I think he might have moved on as well.
Yeah, perhaps he has. Perhaps, but no, he was with Bar, wasn't he? Yeah, but yeah, that's, to be fair, the only couple that I could really find. Who's gone on to play in Europe of recent times, anyway. But a couple of decent players there. Cabral's a decent player. Perhaps don't think he gets the recognition maybe he deserves with it, but he's a
he's a good player.
And obviously Jesus is Jesus, isn't he? But well known to many.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple actually who weren't youth academy products a little bit further back, but interestingly played more or less the same time in kind of the mid-90s. Roberto Carlos was there just before he
Oh,
left for
really? Right.
Inter.
Oh,
He was playing elsewhere before. I think it was a smaller side. He joined Palmeiras and then he went from Palmeiras. He was only there for 2 years, the
right.
same as Rivaldo. So he and Rivaldo played together for just 1 year, '94, when they won the Serie A. So Roberto Carlos, Rivaldo were in the same team, and then Cafu came, I think, the year after. So they didn't have Cafu, as far as I can tell, they didn't have Cafu and Roberto Carlos at the same time, but they had
Right.
them very close together. So yeah, three really big names of kind of our time, or just slightly before, Rivaldo, Cafu, and Roberto Carlos. So yeah, three big
Yeah.
names who didn't spend time there, but it is a club where a lot of players have passed through. So yeah, anything else to add on Palmeiras just before we kind of move on?
Not really, James. I think that's pretty much exhausted my notes at the moment. Yeah, so I mean, we can always move on to the second one, really. There.
Yeah, well, I'll do a nice little segue into it, which is the derbies. We love the kind of the passion of the Brazilian football and the derbies that it kind of throws up.
Of course, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we spoke about a couple of them last week, and the Fla Flu derby, and a couple of the other ones in Rio. So the biggest one in Sao Paulo, which is just called, the Clásico Paulista, the Sao Paulo derby, is Palmeiras versus Corinthians. So that's the big one as far as kind of the city's concerned, or generally. And that's apparently the most intense kind of derby in Brazil. So we were wrong about the Fla
Wow.
Flu kind of derby. Apparently, it's Palmeiras Corinthians. I know fans of other clubs will probably tell us different, but apparently that's the one that's kind of the big one. So Corinthians will move on to from kind of there. So we're talking about Palmeiras having such a big fan base, and Corinthians are actually supposedly even bigger. So Corinthians are supposed to be 30 million fans, which is the second most followed team in the country. So George, what have you learned? What can you tell us about Corinthians? I think this was a club that we both kind of enjoyed reading about.
Yeah, we definitely did. I definitely did, and I think you're, thinking about changing again your allegiances, aren't you, James? To perhaps with Corinthians. Last time you
Well,
were your Gama, weren't you? Now you're Corinthians. But who knows where you might end up come the start of the season. But yeah, Corinthians is yeah, I like them as well. Like you said, obviously, like you said, one of the most supported teams in Brazil. Corinthians or Sport Club Corinthians Paulista, based in the Tatuapé district in Sao Paulo. Again, I murdered it probably, but if that makes any sense to anybody, there you go. But founded in 1910. This is interesting. I found this pretty interesting. Again, like Palmeiras with the Italian immigrants. This one was founded by 5 railway workers who were inspired by a London-based team. Amateur side they were called Corinthians. They were touring Brazil at the time, so they took a little bit of inspiration from them. The famous crest. Obviously, I like the crest. I know you do as well.
It's cool.
It's a good one. That it was introduced in 1939 by a modernist painter, and also he was a former player called Francisco Ribolo. And yeah, that's I found it really interesting just reading a bit about the history of it all. And Francisco Ribolo, yeah, he did a good job of that crest there, because it's a pretty good one. And obviously they play in black and white stripes traditionally. So yeah, I like them. I don't think they're really that successful, are they now? But maybe certainly in the future, in the past. Sorry, they've done all right, haven't they? They've got decent, like I said, decent following anyway. So
Well,
yeah.
they are a successful team. I mean, so Serie A titles, in terms of Serie A titles, they've won 7, which is the second most out of the Sao Paulo clubs. They've won 3 Copa do Brazils, again second to Palmeiras. They've only won 1 Copa Libertadores, which is 2 less than both Palmeiras and Sao Paulo. And Campeonato Paulista, like I say, they are the most successful out of the local clubs. Have won 30 titles, so that's more than anybody else. Yeah, nice club. Apparently, the kind of the badge with the nautical kind of themes was due to it was a sport club kind of across the board, as I think a lot of them were, and it kind of it was apparently due to the kind of success they'd had in nautical sports prior to I think what was it? It was quite a long time after the formation that they changed the badge, wasn't it? And I think they decided that apparently because just to represent that or something along those lines.
Yeah, nearly 30 years after it's been founded. So yeah, I think I did read about that being nautical and then they switched kind of football, didn't they? And that and if I've looked at the stadium, Arena Corinthians, it's a capacity 47,252, but it was also used for the FIFA World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. It had a bigger capacity then, a much larger capacity of 68,727. So they really packed them in for the World Cup. So but again, I think it's a pretty old stadium, really. Most of them, correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of them seem to have been used from the formation, the stadiums, or relatively close to the formation of the club.
I think I read that Corinthians, I think, have had a few different stadiums. I'm not sure.
Oh, right.
If that was Corinthians.
Okay.
It might not have been. It might have been Sao Paulo, but I know that one of them have moved a number of different times, and they had a really kind of beloved stadium, which they left, I think, in 2014.
Right.
It might have been Sao Paulo actually. Yeah. So yeah, well, we won't confuse. We'll confuse.
No.
But yeah, like you say, interesting story with the railway workers, and I think the thing is, or it seems to be with Corinthians, is that they're really they model themselves on being a club for the working class. So we spoke last time about the Rio clubs and how I think Vasco are more of the kind of the club of the people, and they call themselves O Legítimo Club de Povo, the legitimate club of the people, Vasco da Gama. And interestingly, the Corinthians, one of the nicknames is apparently Timo de Povo, which is the team of the people. So it's interesting that Vasco label themselves as the O Legítimo Club de Povo, and I don't know. There might be some kind of story there. I'm not sure, but they do seem to very much go in for this kind of working class, whereas the rest of Sao Paulo appear to be a little bit slightly more kind of wealthier. I know, especially the Palmeiras, I think, is a wealthier area. No, sorry, Sao Paulo, Morumbi is a wealthier area. But yeah, they were kind of always seen as that kind of club who were representing kind of the poor, and they, I think, they were kind of they have the fan base are called Fiel, the faithful, as well, which kind of links up to that kind of a feeling. And I know that they've had quite a bit of a history with some really influential players, which I'll just go into a little bit later, which kind of feeds into that kind of thing for the people. So did you learn anything else kind of note about Corinthians?
Not really. I mean, again, I've gone into kind of the club president, Agostinho Pereira de Melo, and he's just taken over literally last month of the club. So, so we'll wait to see how he gets on and how he runs it. Again, notable. There wasn't many again that I could find. Again, anybody, let me know. Again, like I said, we're just learning and going into it, but I couldn't find many. There was only Willian, who obviously notable youth graduates who've gone into European football. Willian, obviously, we know very well, currently still in the Premier League with Fulham. He came through the Corinthians academy to go on. Maybe even Chelsea again. I think Chelsea bought him straight. He went to Shakhtar, didn't he? But again, it just shows you the quality of the players that are coming through, in Brazilian football to come into Europe, because Willian is still doing it now, isn't he? He's still performing.
Yeah,
he's pretty much one of pretty much one of their best players, isn't he? Fulham at the moment. So,
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's still got it.
you know, Arsenal, Chelsea, so yeah.
Yep, they've got Gabriel Moscado, who's just come through, gone to Paris Saint-Germain. So he's
Oh,
one to
yes,
keep
of
an eye on the
course.
team, I think. So he's just come through and just moved on. But they've got quite a history of interesting players as well. So kind of they have. When I learn about Palmeiras and Sao Paulo having the World Cup winners, I kind of looked at the other clubs as well. Corinthians haven't had a member of the team at all of the World Cup victories, but they have only missed one. So 1958, they had the goalkeeper Gilmar, who was a Santos legend actually, and a chap called Orico. In 1970, they had Rivellino, who is one of the all-time legends of Corinthians. In 1970, he played for Corinthians for most of his career. I think he was seen as the originator of, Ronaldinho's little flip flap.
Oh, yeah.
Outside
All right.
inside.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
So
Fair enough.
Rivellino was apparently the original flip flapper, and
Right.
he's a legend at Corinthians. So he was part of the 1970 team. There was also a chap called Ado, who was the goalkeeper, who was a backup goalkeeper. So then they missed. They didn't have anyone. 1962, 1994. There was a guy called Viola, who I don't think was a particularly important player. 2002, which was interesting, was Dida, but Dida was a backup goalkeeper at the time, and he was actually on loan at
Right.
Corinthians from Milan. Something to do with the
Oh,
passport
really?
issue. He couldn't. Yeah, something to do with that. And Milan, he was back up at Milan at the time, and they loaned him to Corinthians, where he didn't play long, but he was there when they won the World Cup. So interesting. Ricardinho, a midfielder, I think, who had a brief stint at Middlesbrough, didn't play a game, but played at Borough in the kind of, I think, mid 2000s, maybe before. And then another guy called Van Petter, who I think is a bit of a legend at Corinthians as well. 3 different spells there. Some interesting players more recently. Paulinho, Paulinho from Spurs, Barcelona. He was at Corinthians 2011, won the title with
Oh,
them.
yes. Right.
Freddie Rincon, who was a Colombian striker, did well, won a couple of titles, a Club World Cup. So he was quite celebrated. Carlos Tevez as well came from
Right. Yeah.
Argentina. Corinthians, and he went from Corinthians to West Ham in 2005 or 2006, and again he won a title with them. So he's quite a celebrated kind of, or remembered fondly at least. And then Vladimir, who was a player in the 70s and 80s, played over 800 times, and Vladimir's important because he was, along with Socrates, a player who kind of set up what was called Corinthians democracy, where it was where the players, they kind of led the players into having a vote about matters to do with the players. So Socrates, I think, was the main driver behind it, and he basically got the players together and tried to make them create a better kind of environment for themselves, which they did end up doing. And he also played a part in encouraging Brazilian people to vote. I think it was 1982 or something, I'm not sure, in the kind of the elections, which helped to end the kind of dictatorship, I think. But Socrates was a great guy and a really interesting guy. So yeah, Corinthians democracy is an important movement, and he was a big part of that, and him and Vladimir together. So that's an interesting little, it kind of feeds into that kind of feeling about Corinthians, at the kind of the club for the people, that kind of feeling. Lula, the president of Brazil at the moment, who's a very left-wing guy, he's a fan of the club as well, apparently publicly. So they're that kind of club, really, and yeah, they're interesting in the kind of the landscape of Brazilian football in that respect. So yeah, some interesting names, big names.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like you said, it's a quite an enjoyable club there, and good history. All sorts. So yeah, fantastic, and hopefully they'll have a good season this time.
Yeah, I think they were 11. No, they weren't 11th. Where were they? They were
I can't remember where
lower
they
table, I
finished.
think. Yeah, they were battling
I
relegation
think
for a bit. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on them this season, and we'll see how they're kind of getting on.
yeah,
So
definitely.
Yeah, so the third of the big clubs that we'll have a kind of a slightly more in depth look at is the kind of the name of the city, the club of the city, Sao Paulo. So
Yes, Sao Paulo.
so George, what can you tell us about Sao Paulo?
So Sao Paulo, or Saint Paul, of course, in English, founded in 1930 from Morumbi, sorry, area. That's the area of the city. You said it was quite a sort of well-to-do area, didn't you, James? So
Apparently, I've not
yeah,
been there.
so no, of course not. Well, yeah, it would be news to me if you had. Um, so, so it founded. Interesting again. They all seem to have interesting stories. This one is probably quite the one of the most interesting. Why it was founded by 60 members and friends from Sao Paulo, two different Sao Paulo teams, Club Atlético Paulistano and Asociação Atlética des Palmeiras. So basically, those two clubs came together, or people from those two clubs came together and created Sao Paulo, the team Sao Paulo now. The club colours are taken from both those different clubs. So I think Palistano was the red, whereas Atletica des Palmeiras they brought in the black to the now shirt colours. Obviously, we see the white with the red, and is it white with red stripe and two black stripes, or is it just one black and one red
I think
stripe?
it's just one each, and it's just one
Yeah,
across the middle
I
each.
think it is. Yeah, so that's where that's where that came from. Um, Now, it's one of only two clubs as well that have never been relegated from the top flight of Brazilian football. The other one is my team, of course, Flamengo. So there's only two
Oh,
sides there who's never been relegated from the top division. But yeah, it's a brilliant club. This I was doing a lot of reading about it. To be fair. Found out a bit about the most successful manager, of course, Telly Santana.
yeah,
And he's
yeah.
wildly go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, I'll just run through the kind of the successes that they have had, and then we'll have a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah,
more
of
of a look at
course.
because I know you've done
Yeah,
a bit of
yeah.
reading about them. So,
A
yeah,
little bit, yeah.
kind of the third most successful of the three big sides in Sao Paulo. So they've won 6 Serie A titles, which is half as many as Palmeiras, but only one less than Corinthians. They've won one Copa do Brasil, which is quite amazing, really, in the whole history. And it was actually this year, well, last year, 2023, they were the Copa do Brasil champions under, I think it was Dorival Jr., the Brazil coach who's just been hired. He won the cup last year, so that was their only one, first time in the history. They have won 3 Copa Libertadores. They have also won, I think, 3 or 2 Club World Cups. They beat Liverpool, which I remember very sorely in 2005 after we'd won the Champions League.
Yes. Yeah.
So
It
that
was a
was,
good team that Liverpool had out, wasn't it? And
well, I'm
one
not sure.
nil.
I think it was 1-0. I think we had about 3 or 4 goals disallowed or something
Oh,
crazy,
really? Oh,
and Sao
wow.
Paulo won. Yeah, they're also
That
the
was
only
in
team.
that was
Go
in
on.
Japan, wasn't it? Was it in
Can't
Tokyo? That
remember. It might
I
have
think
been.
it.
I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
But it was, yeah. They're the only team from the three here, or from the four, even if we look at Bragantino, have won the Copa Sudamericana, which is kind of the Europa League, if you like, of the kind of to the Copa Libertadores is Champions League. So they won that. And they've won 22 Campeonato Paulista, which is less than both Corinthians and Palmeiras. So they haven't won a title, I think, since 2008, something like that. That was on the back of a three-peat. So they won 3 in a row, I think, under Maurizio Ramalho. So yeah, 2000 must have been 2006, 7, 8. 3 wins, not since then. But he isn't, I don't think, the most celebrated coach even in Sao Paulo. That is your man, Telly Santana, isn't it?
Yeah, Telly Santana. Obviously, like you said, they've been in a bit of a dry spell, James, over the last, what is that, 15 years or so.
16 years.
You know, they've even had players like, managers like Hernan Crespo, in since then. He had a really poor spell, I think, a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, Telly Santana, he's widely credited by a lot of people. I think generally in the media, for being the creator of the Hogger Benito style of play, basically. So he basically, to many, thought that movement up and that way of playing, and he was widely known for putting together the 82 World Cup team, the Brazilian 82 World Cup team. Obviously, Brazilian manager from 82 till 86. But yeah, I mean, that was obviously the team were widely known and one of the best known for not winning the World Cup. I think that's, it was obviously a fantastic team there. But I think they just won. They were just under a massive kind of, it was like a juggernaut of just winning titles after title, basically under Santana. I think I don't know if I actually was trying to count them up, but I don't know if I've counted them correctly. I don't know if you've got
Too many. No, I don't.
I was trying to count them, but he didn't have I couldn't find a list. Basically, I've got here 2 Serie A titles, 2 international cups, 1 Recopa Sudamericana, 1 Supercopa Libertadores, and 1 Copa Libertadores. So he's won what, I don't know what that is there.
6,
It's
7
about
times.
6 or 7, and that was all that I could count. So, but I think they were just going into. He just was a fantastic manager, basically. A bit like sort of, I don't know, it's a bit of a wild sort of comparison, maybe, but maybe like what sort of Ferguson was to Man United in a little, in a way. Such a celebrated manager. Obviously, and the national manager with the Brazilian team. Obviously, they probably should have won that World Cup in '82. Really, with the team what they had, and the manager what they had there as well. So fantastic manager. The current manager, less so. Very young manager, 39. He's only 39, so he's very young. Took Juventude up. He took them up to the first division this season, and then he was appointed just last month as Sao Paulo manager. So it's a massive step up from Juventude. So we'll see how he gets on. But obviously they like the way that he got them promoted last season. But yeah, Santana, fantastic manager. Will they ever see one like that again? Probably not.
No, probably not. We'll see how he gets on. They were 11th last year, so they haven't really. They're a bit of a sleeping giant. There's a couple of them about, isn't there? And they are one of them.
Definitely.
They've had success in the past, as we've touched on, and they've had those big players as well. Like Palmeiras, they've had a player in the World Cup winning squad of everyone, and they've actually had a bit more than Palmeiras as well. They've kind of had more than like numerous players. So 58, they had a chap called Dino Sonnier, then a chap called Di Sordi, who I think was a bit of a legend. They had a Mauro Ramos, who I think was more famed for his Santos kind of spell, and he actually won the World Cup as captain in '62 when he was with Santos. But he was at 58. In 58 he was with Sao Paulo. '62, Hilderaldo Bellini, a chap called Jurandir as well. Then '94 they had Zetti, who was a backup keeper, and Cafu, who came through actually the ranks at Sao Paulo. So
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Cafu was around. Leonardo, who you might remember, has recently been at PSG as a technical director, and I think Milan before that he was Milan manager. He was there in '94. He was at Sao Paulo, and Muller, who was a striker, who didn't get that much game time. I think Romario kind of kept him out of the team, but he was part of the squad. And then 2002, Giuliano Belletti, who scored in the 2006 Champions League final for Barcelona. right back. He was part of the squad in 2002. Kaká, who is perhaps probably the best known recently of the youth kind of products, was in 2002, and Rogerio Ceni, who as well is a really obviously celebrated goalkeeper. He actually played. I read about he played over 1,000 times for Sao Paulo.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember Ceni? He was a goal scoring keeper. Rogerio Ceni. He used to score penalties, free kicks.
Yeah, vaguely. I think I've seen. Yeah, I think I've seen sort of videos and things of him. Yeah.
Well, he was the goalie in 2005 when they beat us in the final in the Club World Cup. Yeah, he scored over 100 goals, I think, for them, and he's ridiculous.
Yeah, because that's right. He took penalties and free. I mean, that's incredible. But I suppose he's before his time, really. I guess keepers now have to be good at kicking, don't they? And with the feet. Sure. So maybe he sort of set the precedent for that. I mean, you don't see many goalkeepers scoring really at all. Obviously, Alisson got one, didn't he? But
the big man,
that was
I missed out there. 1970 as well. They had Jesson, who was a bit of a legend as well.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they're very kind of celebrated. I think they wear that as a bit of a badge of pride to have had a player through every World Cup success. But yeah, Kaká, I think, is probably the most well known to come through in probably the last 20 years or so. Have you found anybody else at all?
Yeah, well, I have, James, but before I get to that, I'd like to. I think I missed out the manager's name before, just a minute ago. Tiago Carpini is the manager's name, the current manager. We've got the club president. If we have a look at continue that theme of looking at the club presidents, Julio Caceres, 62-year-old. He's also a radio host in Brazil. I think he hosts a radio show. Married to a former Miss Brazil as well. Is him? Wow. So yeah, and the stadium. If we have a look at the stadium, Estadio Cirio Pompeu. Other names: Marumbi or Marumbis. Marumbis is because that's because of advertisements and things like this. I think it's it's called, that's a name for it, Marumbis. It's a massive stadium again, and sometimes the Brazilian national team play. That shows you how big sort of Sao Paulo is, really. The national team do play there sometimes. It's 66,795 is the capacity of that stadium, so it's massive, really. But if you look at if you go back to the original question you asked me, James, about have I found any more? Obviously, Kaká, like you said, that's widely celebrated. He's a fantastic player. Julio Baptista played for
the Beast.
The Beast played for Arsenal. Didn't really do much with Arsenal. I think he played for AC Milan as well and Real Madrid.
I remember him.
I think, as for a time, and also a bit of a controversial character of late, of course, plays for Man United. Anthony came through Sao Paulo as well, so obviously a bit of a controversial character, as we know, but he came through their academy as well.
I thought you were going to say Lucas Moura. Lucas Moura did as well, and I know he's been slightly controversial with his political views a little bit. But he came through and he's back there as well, isn't he?
Yeah, sorry, I did. Yeah, I missed off Moura as well. Of course, he's playing. He's back. Is he back there now? He
is. Yeah, he's back at Sao Paulo.
I thought he was. Yeah, obviously, much celebrated at Spurs for that goal he scored against Ajax. Wanted to turn them around, put them into the Champions League final. So yeah, he did all right at Spurs as well, did Moura. So yeah, that's that. I missed that one off. So thank you for that.
That's okay. Well, that's why we do the research, isn't it? Just to have a little look.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Of course, it's good to learn about these clubs. It is a massive club that probably, I don't know, probably not my least favourite, but out of the four of them, I'd say that probably my third favourite out of the four of these that we're looking at here today.
Well, they were the people I think have spoken and agreed. No, actually, no. I think they have slightly more fans apparently than Palmeiras, but below
Right.
Corinthians. So the 22 million, I think it was 21 million. I
Right.
think Palmeiras, so slightly bigger. But yeah, it is a big club. So from one big club on to just to kind of to wrap up a little bit to a smaller club who aren't well. Actually, we're going to touch on Red Bull Bragantino. And Bragantino aren't in Sao Paulo. So we wanted to look at the teams that are currently in the top flight. So they're slightly outside of Sao Paulo. But there are other clubs in Sao Paulo, of course. We spoke about Rio last week. There's about 150. I'm not sure on the numbers on Sao Paulo, but I took a quick look at the Campeonato Paulista, the kind of regional championship. And where in Rio it was very, very slim pickings for anyone outside of the big clubs. Sao Paulo has been a bit more kind of diverse in the winners. So I think there's been 14 different winners over the years.
Right.
There was, so aside from the kind of the big, so the three clubs we've talked about, there is one big elephant in the room, which is Santos. So we would have probably talked about Santos in this episode, but apologies to all Santos fans. We wanted to talk about the clubs in the top division. So for the first time ever, that means that we're not talking about Santos. But so the Santos have won a lot of them as well. But there's 14 other sides apart from Corinthians, apart from Santos, apart from Sao Paulo and Palmeiras. So there's 14 other teams, 15 including Bragantino. But the most recent one was in 2014, and the most recent before that was 2004. So in the last 20 years, there's only been two teams that have won it outside of Corinthians, Palmeiras, Sao Paulo, and Santos. So smaller kind of clubs. That was Ituano, who are a second division team, won it 2014, and a team called São Caetano in 2004. So I think they're a bit lower down. But yeah, so we will touch on Bragantino, who are apparently, I think, about 90 kilometers out of Sao Paulo to the north. So yeah, a smaller side, and haven't really touched on, made an impact really in terms of league title wins, cup wins, stuff like that. They did win, like I say, one of the Campeonato Paulistas in 1990, and that's about as good as it's got for them. But yeah, interesting club still. So what can you tell us kind of about those, George? What have you learned or would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's obviously by far out of those clubs the least successful, really, and like I said, probably smallest. Obviously, we know now. Obviously, we all know that Red Bull have monopolised it now. Red Bull Bragantino. I think that's one of four teams that they own. Is it now? Yeah, I mean it's a massive franchise, as we know, but it's in the district of Braganca Paulista in Sao Paulo. So you say it's not in Sao Paulo? Is that just slightly outside?
Well, Sao Paulo is the state, so it's a state,
Right,
and so Sao Paulo, the city, is the capital of Sao Paulo, the state.
Yeah. Oh,
so
right.
Bragança is in Sao Paulo state, but not in Sao Paulo itself. No, apparently it's about 90 kilometers outside. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah. So Braganca, founded as Club Atletico Bragantino in 1928. So obviously with the Red Bull franchise, it's had a rebrand. Founded as Club Atletico Bragantino. It's again relegated. They had two relegations in the space of a few years. One from the top division to the second division, and then again in 2002. That was in 1998 to the second division. Then in 2002, relegated to Serie C, so the third division of Brazilian football, as low as that. And then obviously they started to rise back up. Red Bull took over in 2019, so it's still relatively new. That for Bragantino is the Red Bull kind of franchise. But yeah, it's in a way, I don't know how Bragantino fans are feeling about it. Anybody let us know on the socials, of course, and everything. Get in touch with us, but it's interesting to hear how they feel about the club being rebranded and taken over by Red Bull, because I can't imagine in one way they might be happy. I know it happened in Leipzig, where Leipzig were not very challenging a lot, and then they suddenly got the money from Red Bull and started to compete with the likes of Munich at times. Salzburg again, I think they were really much on top of their division anyway. I think, but I'm not
I don't think
entirely
they were.
sure.
No, I don't think they
Oh, were
were.
they?
It's
Oh, were they
there's
not? So
Rapid Vienna
yeah.
and there's a few
Oh
other
yeah,
Austria,
of
Austria,
course.
Vienna.
Oh yeah. So
So
again,
they were, but they are now for sure. Yeah.
oh, they're perennial winners now of that division. It's not even a test for them, I don't think. So the money has obviously monopolised it. Obviously, it's difficult to get players, I assume, to go to Bragantino, the big players, because there's so much history and big clubs in Brazil. You've kind of got your pick of them. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more. I think they were quite high up this season. The one just gone, I think.
They were sixth, I think, which was
Yeah.
probably I
So
didn't see, but I think it was the best ever finish. They were
yes.
when the takeover of Red Bull coincided with them going up, so
Right.
they took over just before they went up. Then they
When
went up.
when did they go up? Because I couldn't find when they went up from Serie B to Serie A. I
They went
couldn't
up into
find that.
so Red Bull took over in 2019. They went up.
Yeah.
Well, the first they went up that year. So the first season back
Oh
was
right.
2020,
Oh right. Yeah.
and so they've been away since 1998. So I don't know whether it played a part or how they decided they were taking them over. But yeah, they took over Red Bull and then they went up. And since then, I think they've been kind of on a bit of an upward trajectory. So
Yeah. It looks like wow. So they've been out of the first division for like 18 years or so.
no longer than that, like 22, more than 20
Oh
years they've
wow.
been.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. 21 years is that? Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, that's incredible. Really. So yeah. Then again, so like you said, the Red Bull money would have helped them. Yeah, it's helped them rise up
I mean,
the league.
it's helped them consolidate it, and I'm sure it'll help them kind of become a bigger side. But it's like you say, there's so many big historic clubs, not just in the rest of the country, but in the rest of their state and not far away. That it's going to be difficult. Salzburg, you can do that. Leipzig, even a little bit, you can shoot up with the money involved, but I think it's going to be a bit more difficult for them. But it will be interesting because I'm sure in the years to come they will be funneling players through Salzburg and Leipzig. But we're yet to really see that kind of come in. But they have had a little bit of history actually prior to that. I mean, it's not like they've come from nowhere. They have been a little bit around. And it was a bit difficult to find some information on them. But one thing I did find was that the manager who won the World Cup in '94 with Brazil, Carlos Alberto Pereira, was a former Bragantino manager. He actually took the Brazil job in 1991 from being the Bragantino manager. So he took over directly the national team from Bragantino and then won the World Cup 3 years later. So he
Oh
was
wow.
a success story of the club. Another one was Mauro Silva, who was also in that 1994 World Cup winning team, and he played every single minute of the campaign apart from 45 minutes in the group stage match. So he was a real big part of that team. He wasn't at Bragantino at the time. He was playing for Deportivo La Coruña in
Oh
Spain.
wow.
But he was a big name. He won 59 caps for Brazil, and actually in 2016, so just a few years ago, he was voted as the best player in Depor's history, which is
Oh
quite
wow.
an honour, really. So, and he was at Bragantino for a couple of years in the 90s, and he was part of the team that won the Campeonato Paulista and also came runner-up in Serie A in 1991. So that seems to be a bit of a golden era for a couple of years anyway,
Yeah,
before they
yeah.
fell away. So couple of names there: Carlos Alberto Pereira, the manager, Mauro Silva, midfielder, who were kind of notable. But apart from that, it's been a bit kind of difficult to find anybody who was really kind of big at Bragantino.
Yeah, to be fair, I was looking again like I did for the others and youth academy products. I couldn't find any, to be fair, that had come through and gone into Europe at least. And yeah, I did find it difficult in a way to get information on the club, really, to be fair. And it's interesting what you said about them in the future, maybe trying to funnel players and get maybe players on loan from the other Red Bull teams. Um, and I wonder whether they do that the same with the managers, because we see that happening, don't we, as well? And we've seen it in England, didn't we, a bit as well, with the Red Bull, the Red Bull thing going on as well, and with Hasenhüttl and Marsh, of course, coming through to the Premier League. So interesting to see, if they can. If they can do that and funnel players from, because Leipzig have been there for a few years, haven't they, with Red Bull now? So they'll have a good system going. So, and they tend to all use the same philosophy and everything. So, and the manager there at the moment is a Portuguese fella, Pedro Caixinha, who who was manager at Rangers for a little bit. Didn't really work, and he sort of knocked about a little bit in sort of Mexico and just various different places, really. And and then he's ended up at Bragantino since sort of late 2002, late 2022. So he's been there for a couple of years. No, yeah, well, yeah, he hasn't been there for that long. Yeah, he's been there for just over a year, basically. So yeah, I think that's, again, I didn't really find that much information out on them. Really, it was a bit difficult to get much from it. At the stadium, Estadio Abi Chidid, or Nabizeo. It's called Nabizeo, I think, as as a sort of another name, basically. Yeah, it's quite a small one, although it's quite a small stadium, really. I'm just trying to see the capacity of it actually here.
I think it's a bit of an old stadium, isn't it? And I think as time goes on, they'll probably start to develop it and modernise it a bit. And they're not stupid, the guys at Red Bull. They'll know there'll be something there that'll have told them this is a club worth taking and everything. So I'm sure,
of course. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, I'm sure in the years to come that they'll start developing, and we'll start seeing them more regularly at the top of the table. And if we did this in a couple of years, we'd probably have perhaps a couple of cups to report about. But for the time being, they're definitely bottom of this kind of this roster anyway. But one thing I did find out about Bragança, which is interesting, is it's the national sausage capital of Brazil. Bragança Paulista. So yeah, it's apparently famous for its sausages, and apparently there's a very famous Restaurante Rosario, which is just outside or in front of the stadium. So if you're ever in Bragança, George, you know where to go. You like your sausage, don't you?
Well, I do, but I definitely do, but it certainly won't be for you, would it? Unless unless they do some kind of vegetarian option, but perhaps I'm sure they do nowadays. But that's interesting information, because yes, I do like a good sausage. So I'll be sure if I am about there, James, that I do get along and try one of them, because that would be nice. But yeah, I did find out the capacity of this stadium, actually, by the way.
Oh,
seven. I know you wouldn't been able to sleep if you hadn't found that one out. So correct. It's 17,724 is the capacity. They actually have had this stadium since its formation in 1928. So yeah, like you said, it is a pretty old stadium. And like you said, they will definitely develop it, because, as well, like you said, they're not silly. They're not just putting a dart at the board and saying let's take over that club. They'll have done the research into it and made sure it was a sound business decision. So, like you said, we'll probably see a lot of titles and things added to their sort of name in the coming years as they grow into some kind of powerhouse, possibly, of Brazilian football. But as a sort of I hope not, maybe, because it's a bit man-made, isn't it? Then you want to grow it naturally, and it's I don't want to offend any Bragantino fans, but obviously it's not got the historical might of some of the other teams in that list that we've just covered, and other teams that are on top of the Brazilian league at the moment. So, well, Palmeiras are, aren't they? So, yeah, maybe not from a sort of a traditionalist sort of view, but that's the way football goes, isn't it? Money talks.
It is, and certainly if they do end up having the success that they think they do, they're going to have to start cooking a heck of a lot more sausages. So,
well,
let's
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean that yeah, naturally, the house will have to get bigger, won't it? The sausage house outside the stadium.
That's it. That's it. The sausage
Yeah,
works.
yeah. I mean,
So on
yes,
that note, anyway, I think
I've got to go there.
Oh yeah, you have. Yeah, you're a real sausage connoisseur, aren't you?
Yes.
Anyway, we'll so that's Sao Paulo, really. I know. I mean, like I say, the elephant in the room was Santos, who we might cover it another day in detail because there's a lot to say about Santos. But yeah, that's a wrap on Sao Paulo, I think. So, any final thoughts from you, George?
Not really. No, it's been a good episode. Like I said, the sort of internet problems, the way we tried to get it all sorted, and it's sorted. Hopefully, people can find us on YouTube. We're going to set up the YouTube account. So you can see us if you want to and watch that way, or you can listen on Spotify and the other available places to get it. It's great that people have been listening in. So hopefully people continue to do so. Share it about if you enjoy it, or people that might enjoy it, and yeah, get following, get subscribing. It's much appreciated, obviously, on the Instagram accounts and the Twitter accounts as well. Yeah, go follow and everything like that as well. So yeah, fantastic. A pleasure to talk about Sao Paulo. Where to next, James? That's the answer. That's a question from me to you.
That's something that we'll have to we don't want to give the game away, so we'll leave the viewers with that question in their mind, and perhaps they'll do their own little bits of research and see. But it might be a club who one of my favorite players began their career at, and he is a current Premier League star and one of the very best in his position in the world. So that's a little clue for anybody who might pick up on a few bits and pieces. But for now, let's say goodbye, and we'll get along. And thank you everybody for listening again. Hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully it all does work on YouTube and through the airwaves. So until next time. I haven't even learned goodbye in Portuguese.
To be fair, I mean, I let me just see. I mean, I'll just see if I can. Probably, yeah, but we can at least try, can't we? I suppose. Let's see. Just bear with me.
I bet I could do it quicker.
Adeus.
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 Adeus for now. Obrigado.
Adeus.
Adeus. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.